All right, hello guys. Back with another video. Today we're doing a forecast. It's been a bit, so what's up? Had vacation and got some time to relax, but we're back at it. Mainly this is gonna be more of a long range video. I'll briefly touch on today using the href and some mesoscale stuff. But right now, let's get into it. So today we have a enhanced risk, as you can see over here, over the northern plains. We're gonna get Epic Pen open here. Okay, so we have a large marginal from Maine all the way to North Dakota, technically, but it goes in Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, even West Virginia and Maryland. Indiana, Ohio, Southern Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, and then all the way up here. We also have a slight in North Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, and Colorado and Kansas. And then we have a large enhanced from northeast Colorado stretching through Nebraska and over into South Dakota. For the tornado risk, there's a large 2% from northeast Colorado up into the Canada border, including South Dakota, Nebraska, Minnesota, and North Dakota. We have a 30 hatched wind risk over Colorado, Nebraska, and South Dakota. And then we have a 15 hail. Expecting a complex evolution of one line and cluster storms over South Dakota, and then multiple other clusters as well. Um, Here's what the href has in store. 500, a rather subtle pattern with a couple waves riding the ridge. You got a high pressure here. The waves are riding up like this and along like that, creating that severe weather risk over portions of the north central US. And then we have troughing over the east central United States, creating that large, broad, severe zone generally here. Looks like the best chance of those stronger storms is going to be in Maine based on the flow. We'll take a look at href maximum probability by hour. So you can see here the highest coverage is expected to be in North Dakota and South Dakota over the next few hours here, with a large isolated zone all the way into from Maine to Missouri. And then coverage is generally expected to again be rather strong over South Dakota, also Colorado as well. And we're expecting that to kind of move southward throughout the night into Iowa and Nebraska and generally weaken. Tomorrow, generally isolated severe storms are possible from New Mexico all the way into Illinois with a secondary zone in the mid-Atlantic. Currently, right now, looking at satellite, we can loop it here and you can see that we have our kind of trough generally starting to swing over the Rockies. We're starting to see a few areas of storms starting to bubble up in Colorado and Wyoming along the foothills there of the Rocky Mountains. We're seeing another zone of bubbling cumulus starting to develop in Nebraska here, and we have storms developing in North Dakota up here and in South Dakota and North Dakota generally here. We have a little bit of that wave kind of punching through here, which is going to help develop those storms over that region. We also have the remnants of that tropical storm. I think it's Chantanel, I believe was the name of it. It's currently sitting over portions of Delaware and Virginia and Maryland, generally in here, which is going to cause some brief thunder or brief severe activity over that area. And then we see our generally area of widespread storms, but not necessarily widespread severe storms, but widespread convective activity over really the north central, or really the east central United States here into the northeast. So that's kind of your satellite loop right now. If we stop it, right here, we can see there's a high amount of instability over Nebraska right now. We can zoom in and kind of look at that a little bit. So over Nebraska, there's a lot of instability. Dew points into the 70s, so Cape is getting up into the 3,000 joules per kilogram range, which is pretty high. We have that cumulus field bubbling over north central Nebraska. Seems to be a little bit of a diffuse boundary, generally sitting in here as the surface winds are changing, like another boundary like thing there. We'll play out the rest of the day for you now, with the HRRR model over the north central United States, just to get a general view of what could happen today. So we're expecting to see some showers and storms develop in North Dakota here pretty soon. This is 4 p.m. Also over South Dakota and Minnesota around 4 p.m. as well. This would be Central Time. Generally pretty widespread activity. North Dakota might have some pretty intense supercell activity. Looking at the instability there. And we could see some tornadoes in North Dakota. Strong amounts of 3 Cape, good turning. So we'll see how that risk evolves. Looks like an MCS is probably going to evolve there in Nebraska and South Dakota, bringing some strong winds, potentially some above 74 mile per hour. And that activity shifts into Iowa and Nebraska. Here's a look at how activity evolves over Colorado. So it's currently, as I'm making this video, it's currently 12:20. We can see those storms start to develop around 2 o'clock or so in the foothills and at least Central Time. And they move kind of eastward, bringing that wind and hail risk with them. And then they generally die out toward 8 o'clock Central. So that's kind of what we're expecting today. Storm Prediction Center also has a day 2 risk. Mainly a wind and hail is expected. Day 3, we're also expecting another dual marginal area, so dual isolated storms on day 3 over the mid-Atlantic and also over the northern plains. Generally taking a look at the pattern overall, further into the long range, do that here in a second. But we also have a day 4:15 over Nebraska into the Canadian border. And then day 5, we're expecting a severe weather event over the Great Lakes and Mississippi Valley region. SPC will likely need to add probabilities for it, which makes sense in future outlooks, and we'll talk about why here right now. So this is going to be for, okay, this is the, why is 60 GFS here? We need the 12Z. Okay, so this is for day 3. So we have day 3, we're going to have a decent amount of convective activity potential over North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, Colorado. We got several short waves that are riding along the peripheral of this ridge of high pressure over the Four Corners region. We can see an active troughing pattern is ensuing. We got waves in the western United States, the Rocky Mountains region, and then over into the plains, and then they kind of shift down on the peripheral of it as well. So you have an active wave train here, which is going to bring a pretty active sphere pattern. Then you have troughing over the central United States, bringing that severe risk over the mid-Atlantic. Looking at the low levels here, we'll probably have some tornado risk on Wednesday over the central plains, maybe in Nebraska and South Dakota. Generally taking a look at the environmental conditions, we can see our photograph here is rather curved. Your thermal profile has a large temperature and dew point depression, so storms will probably need to produce in the evening in order to have a chance. We'll look at the NAM to kind of see what the NAM generally thinks of this event. So we start to see thunderstorm activity develop around 5 o'clock on the NAM. General corridor is going to be from North Dakota into Nebraska. Seems like your more curved photographs are going to exist in Nebraska and South Dakota. Indeed, they do. Thermal profiles really don't support any of a tornado risk, though. Looks like it's going to be a lot of wind and hail on day 3 or Wednesday over the region. Overall, deep layer shear is pretty moderate, especially over Nebraska. So we could see more longer-lived severe storms over Nebraska, given the stronger amounts of shear. There will be a decent amount of instability as well, but you will run out of that instability eventually. Day 4, we got a severe risk over the northern plains and also into the Midwest. So you have this trough that's going to be kind of over Montana and North Dakota. That'll provide a severe risk, mainly in Canada, but maybe it'll drift into North Dakota. And then we have another pretty strong shore wave over the Nebraska, Colorado, Kansas region, which will provide a severe risk over South Dakota, Kansas, and Nebraska. And then we could have another short wave in Iowa, which will provide a severe risk over northern Missouri, western Illinois, Iowa. So that's kind of the area to watch. Looking at 850 millibars, we have a decent reserve of low level flow. We will definitely have a tornado risk on Thursday. How much of one and where is a little bit of a question right now, but probably somewhere in here will be the area to watch for that tornado threat. Um, Looking at your height falls, you have a pretty decently strong system that moves in, so you're gonna have a decent amount of forcing and it'll come with it. Um, Atmosphere will respond by making a round of intense thunderstorms during the afternoon and evening hours. Looking at the environmental conditions, didn't mean to do that. You have strong amounts of moisture with dew points well into the 70s across a large area. This will help create stronger CAPE values over the region. So over Nebraska particularly is probably the area to watch. You'll have decently strong instability here, noted by all of the thickness between the red and the white lines. Your photograph isn't the best, but you have decently strong shear with 33 knots at 8 kilometers. So you're gonna have a risk for severe storms, mainly wind and hail. Over Iowa, there might be a tornado threat depending upon how outflow boundary and shortwave strength is. You have a lot more of a low-level photograph curve over this region. Your thermodynamics look okay as well. It's just going to depend on if you can get enough forcing in Iowa to actually have a tornado risk. The Euro also doesn't really agree with Iowa having much. It has that wave suppressed and not very strong at all. As you can see here, it has a much weaker wave at only 30 knots, and it has the main bulk of the action being over Nebraska, South Dakota, Kansas. So we'll see what happens with that. You still have that strong moisture over Nebraska, and you get thunderstorms to erupt from North Dakota into Nebraska here. Ahead of those storms in Nebraska, you can see you have a strong thermodynamic environment with CAPE of 2,000 joules per kilogram in the mixed layer, 3,000 at the surface. Deep layer shear of 30 knots and cloud layer 65. So you're going to have severe storms with the strong amounts of shear and the strong amounts of instability. Moving into Friday, this threat will transition eastward over into Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Illinois. We'll probably see some sort of an MCV or mesoscale convective vortex, and we'll look at this on College Edu page here because it'll be a little bit easier to be able to shift frames. But you can see here that the pattern on Thursday, you get that MCS develop, and it just helps make a shortwave there, and that shortwave traverses eastward and really enhances the risk for Friday over kind of Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, as well. Looking at your vorticity is rather strong with that wave as well, which is going to help. 700 millibar, you can clearly see the influence of that wave. You get your little low pressure central right there, and you're going to have warm, moist air coming up from the Gulf all the way up into the region. So you're going to have strong moisture content, and strong moisture content, indeed you do. Dew points are going to be well into the 70s on Friday. Temperatures into the 80s and 90s. This will create a really moist environment with nearly maxed out theta E values, which is a measure of moisture in Kelvin. And you can see here you have your like MCV low pressure kind of maxima there, and you have like a secondary area right here, and you have that warm front that kind of extends here. So you're going to have that severe weather risk if the GFS was right over kind of Illinois, Iowa, southern Wisconsin. Um, Lots of instability will be in play as well, and your wind shear will be pretty strong as well because you're going to have a low level cyclone there. Areas over western Illinois there on the GFS run would have a pretty substantial tornado risk if this were to evolve. Um, you can see that you have a decent low level curve in that photograph there, which is resulting in a lot of um, a lot of helicity for smaller storms to ingest, a decent instability profile as well. And later into the day, the low level photographs get a lot bigger, as you can see here. So your storms in general would probably get bigger, and you have a strong amount of instability still as well, with 2,900 joules per kilogram of mixed layer CAPE, which is a moderate amount, and steep lapse rates as well, with your temperature cooling with height at a reasonably high rate. So we're going to have that severe threat. The Euro has this generally further to the west, which it could be further to the west. Generally looking at ensembles, if we look at the Euro ensemble here, you're generally looking at the severe risk being over um kind of this general region from what I'm seeing. It's a rather broad area, but somewhere in here we'll probably have a pretty substantial severe threat on Friday. We'll probably see a 15% from the SBC come out within the next Outlook update as well, especially since confidence continues to increase. The GEFS has that area locked in as well with a lot more low level, low 25 knots instead of 17. And you have a pretty sizable 700 millibar wave as well punching into the region at 30 knots with a pretty substantial troughing signal. So we're definitely going to have to watch that. A decent amount of height falls as well coming into the region. After Friday, we'll start to see this kind of risk shift into maybe the Ohio Valley and Great Lakes region, and then maybe back into the high plains. Right now, I'm not really too concerned about Saturday. It might be more of those pulse storm days over in Ohio. The low level cyclone is going to shift up into kind of Ontario and Canada there. And generally speaking, we're not going to have enough of a void to create more of a stronger cyclone for that region. So we're not really anticipating anything too substantial severe weather or tornado wise over that region. There could be a decent amount of severe weather. You have a rather strong wave moving into the region, especially over Michigan. We'll have to watch for maybe a substantial damaging wind event or something like that, given the strong wave that moves into that region. We'll take soundings into the thumb of Michigan here, and you can see you don't have the most deep layer shear that makes it over, so not going to be the highest risk actually, if that were to be correct. Not the driest surface area either, but definitely a profile that would support damaging wind gusts. So damaging wind gusts will be a possibility over probably anywhere really in here on Saturday. We'll have to watch for some damaging winds. After Saturday, the pattern gets a little bit more uncertain, and we'll talk about that with the GFS on College Due page. You can see after Saturday here, the pattern is a lot more sparse. There's another wave that develops along with this ridge here. And we start to see the pattern kind of flatten out a lot with the troughs because of the uncertainty on what's going to happen. Likely on Sunday, there might be a severe risk over the northern plains with a look like this, or the central plains as well. We'll have to kind of watch that. Um, Monday, there's been a signal of activity generally somewhere in here. It's a large area, but when we look at the GFS itself, we have a decent looking signal over kind of that region. You can see strong moisture gets pulled into kind of the upper Midwest Great Lakes region. And we have that supply of modest flow that just kind of runs right into it. As you can see here, you have around 40 knots of flow that runs into that region. So you're probably going to have some sort of thunderstorm activity that moves into the Great Lakes during this day. Probably wind and hail is the main hazards. You can see the photograph here isn't very curved or enlarged, as you can see by its smallness, but you have enough deep layer shear, 25 to 30 knots, and strong low-level thermos and thermodynamics in general with lots of instability that you're going to have a severe weather risk. The Euro brought this risk with the 0Z run. A lot further to the north in the northern plains, and it also had a lot more wind shear support as well, and would have brought a look that would have supported a tornado risk even in Minnesota and North Dakota. Looking at forecast soundings here, so we'll have to watch and see how that evolves over the next few days. And then after that, it gets into Lala or range, but the Euro had this pattern moving into the Midwest with a 30 knot shortwave there. So we'll kind of watch that, but generally an active pattern of severe weather is expected to stay over the United States, likely going to be mainly in kind of this general region in here is probably going to be the most active. There'll be events elsewhere, but given the flow, that's probably the region I'd watch out for most. If you like what you see here, Subscribe and like for more, and I'll catch you back later.